All right, so it's the end of the mowing season here in Oklahoma, and I went and mowed the church lawn today with a couple of the guys, and we got done. And this side panel to the church mower got busted up months ago, and we've just been kind of let it ride. It hadn't been in the way. We've been just mowing, and somebody hit it a second time and cracked it up further. But now that the end of the year is here, I can bring it home and fix it. And so I want to show you how to weld plastic with a soldering iron. As you can see, I've already got this nice and hot, and I took the bigger crack and I already welded it back up. I've got a little bit of finishing to do to it, but I got it to where everything's intact, and now I can weld the smaller piece. And I'll show you on the smaller piece how to do this. I do have a hole back here in the back. I don't know if that's visible. Yeah, right back here in the back there's a hole, and I'm not going to be able, I could patch that, but honestly I'm just going to leave a hole there. I'm just going to hold back together the plastic around it. So basically, this is just the cheapest Weller soldering iron. This old. I've had this for probably 35 years. Works great. It's a good soldering iron, but it's bare bones. Nowadays, you can get digital soldering irons for pretty much the same price that have more capability. So this thing this is in my my traveling electrical kit. If I've just got to get a soldering iron out and do something, and I don't have one, I'm not at the house, this is the one I normally have on hand. And it's done. I've done work at MSR Houston, fixing wiring on our race car. It's done a lot of stuff. Anyways, make sure your tip's nice and tight to where you're getting continuity, and make sure your tip heats up. I'm gonna come up here to the end of this crack. I'm gonna make sure that all the pieces are together like they need to be. You want your fit up to be as close as you can get it. So I may have to put some pressure from this end if I can get my pants to quit hanging up on this. I'm gonna use my hips here or my belly, and I'm gonna close this gap up like this. And I'm gonna come here to the middle, I think, and put a little bit of, I'm gonna just tack it basically. Same thing as if you're welding metal. I'm just gonna put a tack weld there. And I'm gonna hold pressure on it for a second while it cools. And you can blow on it too to help. And it's tacked. So now I'm going to come out here to the end. I'm going to tack this. Now if you notice, I'm going right, I don't know how well this shows up on camera, but I'm coming right here into the middle of the crack. And if you let it sit for a second, you work it back and forth, it melts both sides, and then you just go side to side, just wiggle it side to side a little bit. And once you got it started, you can just drag this along that crack. And you can kind of feel the crack as it melts. You'll know right where it is underneath your soldering iron. And so I'm just gonna come up here and work from here. And I'm working from the outermost edges back to where it's cracked. And the more I do this, the stronger this piece becomes, so it doesn't pop apart while I'm trying to weld it. And it goes fairly quickly. So I've almost got this section here. Now you can weld it from the backside if you want it to look prettier. I don't care if it looks pretty. This, mows the church, gets the job done. I'd like the guys to take care of it. And if they see it's been cracked and repaired, they may realize that, hey, somebody's got to work on this and fix it. So I've got, this is the original fender well, plastic fenders out of the Mustang. This is a strip from it. I cut it into strips. It got shattered, and I use it as filler rod when I'm plastic welding. You want to use the same plastic. I think this is the same plastic. I don't know for sure, but basically I can just come in here and melt this end off here. Just keep melting the end off into that hole there, and you're going to fill that gap back in. And that's how you're going to get back to near its original strength. If you just do this weld like this and leave it, it's going to be weak. It'll re-crack pretty easy. If you put some filler in, that'll help strengthen it back up. And so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just keep working at this. I'm gonna come back and lay some filler in this piece back here, and hopefully hopefully in an hour or so I'll have this all repaired and it'll look like new. If this were a $20 part, I'd pitch it and buy a new one. But if you have something that's expensive, I repaired a rearview mirror on a Pontiac Grand Am many years ago. A buddy of mine, he bought it brand new, And 3 months later in the parking lot, somebody knocked the mirror off, and he asked me if I could plastic weld it, and that was actually my first plastic welding job. I said, I'll try, and lo and behold, repaired his mirror for free, and the dealer wanted several $100s for a mirror. So this is how you fix stuff cheap if you don't have money. Okay, so as I'm doing this, I'm leaving ridges to the side, and I can just come back and melt them on in, and that'll help. That fills in that gap. I'm just kind of scraping plastic off of this into the weld. You want some ventilation while you're doing this also. I've got the big fan on in the shop. I got the door open right behind me, partly for light and partly so I can get some ventilation, because you don't want to be breathing this plastic. If the smoke's coming up in your face, reposition. Alright, that's looking better. And it's looking stronger. The more you play with it, the uglier it's going to look. That looks nice and neat, but it's not very strong because it hadn't been filled. This is the final product with it being filled, and it's going to be ugly as can be, but it'll work. And this is opened back up. Alright, so looking in here, it is just spider webbed. I've got a couple different trails to chase here. It's coming along nicely. Yeah, I think it'll be a good solid repair when I'm done. I don't know if you noticed, but when I got to the ends here, I'm trying to smooth this edge where it's cracked. I want to smooth this so it doesn't, I want to fill that gap in and then smooth it so that there's not a crack there for a new crack to propagate from. So that's kind of important. Make sure you smooth out the end of your crack. Kind of, if you've ever had to stop drill a crack in a piece of metal, it's kind of the same thing. I'm trying to not give it a place to start a new crack from. An existing crack is where your new cracks are going to start from. So at this point, I pretty much have everything welded up. Now it's a matter of going back over the weaker points and filling them in with filler plastic. And again, what you're basically trying to do is melt both sides of the crack and then smear them back into each other and then let them cool so that they're one piece of plastic again. There are some plastics that this doesn't work on, but usually when you're dealing with cars or lawnmowers, this hard plastic they make them out of is usually the same stuff. This may or may not be the same plastic, but it's melting in there fine and, and mixing with the two and making a hard plastic surface. So yeah, I hope you learned something from that and it helps you out in your repairing your car or your lawnmower or whatever. I've fixed toys like this, I fixed lawnmowers, I fixed cars, and it works. Cheap soldering iron, that's all you need. If you have some spare plastic to cut up and use as a filler, that's a bonus. It makes your stuff more resilient after you've repaired it, but that's all you need to do this. Alright, so I just finished up, and if you notice, I welded the inside of the crack also. That's important. Like I said, you want to get to the ends of your crack so it can't propagate. Well, if you got your backside open up, it can propagate from there as well. So I did the inside. Sometimes you can't access the inside of the plastic piece you're welding. But I was able to, I welded, I didn't do the filler rod on this like I did on the outside, but I did get it done. Before I put my soldering iron away, I got my razor blade here. I'm going to scrape all that plastic off. I do this with solder also. I always scrape all my solder off the soldering tip. And that's one of the secrets to keep your soldering tip working for years and years. Like I said, this is the original soldering tip also. I've never bought a new soldering tip for this, and this is 30 some odd years old. Now, granted, I don't use it daily, but you can see the shiny tip coming through there, so there we go, that's clean. I'm going to plug it and let that cool down. As you can see here, I did the filler rod on all the cracks on the outside, and I just realized, is that a crack or is that a gouge? Okay, that's gouge, not a crack. So that's not cracked through there, but everything's filled in. It's good to go, and it's got some strength to it. It's not weak. Of course, if they run into a tree like they did when they broke it, it's going to break again, but hopefully it'll hold up just as well. So there you go. And that's how much of the filler rod. I started off with that. That filler rod was about 8 inches long, 10 inches long when I started, and I'm down to just a little nub. It's going in the trash. It's too small to hold anymore. But so I hope you learned something from that, and thanks for watching.